Growing up in an Indian family, I've always been brought up with the weirdest superstitions. For example, we were never allowed to own black cars. We couldn't cut our hair on Tuesdays, and I remember there was a time we had to change our toilet seat configuration so that it wouldn't face the exit of the house. Or the family was gonna go bankrupt. Now, I know it sounds silly, but beliefs like this stem from practices like Vastu Shastra, an ancient Indian architectural guideline that dates back about 8,000 years ago. And it's based on the theory of spatial geometry. And it follows a very simple 9-square grid. Now, as a current architecture student, blind adherence to such traditions raises pertinent questions for me. I remember there was a time I had to change my bed to face south because it was supposed to bring me good luck. Now, my head didn't sit right with this. I needed to know why. What if I wanted to design something at university that worked entirely differently? Did it mean that it was a bad design or it would bring its users bad luck? You know, they say architecture is about buildings, 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 design with the most extravagant geometry or build the fanciest house. But I could build a home with 4 walls, and what would matter more is the space I create inside of it. A space for someone to live life in. First, life. Then spaces, then buildings. The other way round never works. As architect Peter Block once said, structure influences behavior. Design spaces that make you feel you are welcome here and you came to the right place. However, architects today have started to focus more on connections to their physical surroundings. Yes, we're doing great things, we're focusing on sustainability, we're making naturally ventilated buildings, we're even working towards a net zero carbon commitment. But at the core of it all, we're still lacking that emotional sense of belonging. Now, I want to ask with just a very quick show of hands over here, how many of us have faced a time where you've entered a space and you feel uncomfortable or uneasy and you just can't seem to figure out why? It's pretty much, I think it's all of us here, can't really see, but spaces, they're crucial. So crucial that they could be configured in a million possible ways that allow us to thrive if done perfectly, or fail miserably if not. And if only there was a tool that could help us do this. A tool to help us configure smart and beneficial spaces. Vastu. Now, we know that Vastu works wonders from a spiritual point of view. But understanding its scientific roots is written proof as to why this actually works. So let's go back to the 9-square grid I was talking about earlier, as we see the 5 very simple elements of air, earth, fire, water, and space. The same 5 elements that make up the human body and the entire universe. Now, when putting this into practice, one of the simplest examples links to the sun. Now, morning sun is seen to be very beneficial for us, and we know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Due to this, the east side of the grid is highly treasured. This is where you would normally place rooms like your offices, your kitchens, where you would normally spend your mornings. And this follows on throughout the day with the 8 cardinal directions as we harmonize the movement of the sun with the human's daily routine. Now, another very simple example links to the magnetic field of the earth. One should never sleep with their head facing north. And I finally figured out why. Our body is seen as a magnet, with our head being the North Pole and our feet being the south. If we were to sleep with our head facing north, the 2 poles are seen to repel, causing misalignment in our sleep. Now, these are just some very simple examples we can start to think about when incorporating Vastu into our own spaces. So I want to ask another question. How many of us here think you've entered a space which feels nice, or maybe it was Vastu aligned? Maybe it's your bedroom, your office, something like that. Decent amount. Maybe it's interesting because it's less than before. Maybe we can think about why, if it was Vastu aligned or not. Now, there are levels of complexities that come along when we're trying to incorporate Vastu into a space, depending on whether or not we're incorporating this into an entire city or even a singular building. Now, someone that did do this was architect Charles Correa, as he found inspiration in these ancient practices and seamlessly integrated them into his own creations. His approach, grounded in scientific understanding, merged traditional wisdom with contemporary needs. And this fusion of past and present not only paid homage to India's heritage, but also crafted them an entirely new identity post-war. And one of his most renowned works that I do want to talk about is the Jawahar Kela Kandra Art Center in Jaipur, which is shown above over here. And this follows the Navagraha, also known as the nine-house mandala, which is a Hindu astrology term that directly relates the 9 heavenly bodies and deities that influence human life. This is also a reflection of the city of Jaipur's master plan, which follows the same 9-square grid with slight alterations in order to fit its natural landscape. Now, Korea did use this grid with its primary purpose of structuring. However, we do see aligned uses with each of the deities in this 9-square grid directly relating to the purpose of each room. For example, in what would be the square of Mercury in the Navagraha, which symbolizes knowledge, we have the library. The same goes for Venus, as it represents the arts, which is why we have the theater over there. The central square is a void, linked to the square of Surya, the sun god, as it allows for a space for the sun to manifest in the stepped seating area, allowing for individuals to connect and reflect with one another. And what makes this building so special is that when you move through it, you experience different amounts and realisms of space. The individual parts of the building come together like cells rearranging themselves, and these collections create unique experiences of those who seek to explore it. And the reason why Korea's work seems more human is because he sees architecture as a type of sculpture for people to use. It's not about making a building look aesthetically pleasing or incredibly modern or high-tech. These buildings need doors and windows and spaces for light and air. These things don't ruin the sculpture, but rather make it whole. And when we're looking at modern-day architecture in terms of sustainability approaches, we do see aligned uses with Vastu principles, such as daylight methods or passive heating and cooling methods. And at the end of the day, this is what we're even taught at university level. And so this made me wonder, can architects maybe design with the mere intention of suiting human purpose and creating environmentally friendly buildings? And so I look back upon my own last project at university, which was to design a medical healthcare center on campus grounds. And this was the design I finally came up with. Now, little did I realize that I unknowingly followed a lot of Vastu-related rules. Now, I'll just go through a few of them. For example, entrances and waiting areas should be on the north or the northwest side, which I have above over there. Somewhere in the building, you should be having a meditation space, which I do have on my first floor, which was a multi-purpose yoga meditation room for mental well-being. The central area should normally be empty, which I do have a central courtyard in with a skylight above it. Doctors' rooms should be in the south or the southwest, which I do have in the 3 staggered rooms below. And finally, toilets should not face east or west, which I got right in, surprisingly. And as I thought about it, I remember showing up to my interim review and asking my tutor for feedback, and all he said was simplify it. Stick to the basics. Focus on function and make it logical. And mind you, my design was way more complicated before this. And the only way I felt that I could fix that was by unknowingly following these rules. And so I started to wonder, can architects maybe just design intuitively and logically to create spaces that would be the most beneficial for people? After all, when we're looking at a space like a medical center, it's where people go to improve their mental and physical well-being, and we want individuals to be getting speedy recoveries. Or would adhering to theories help? After all, there is no harm in creating a better space to heal. Other questions come up, like, does it even work? Or does it hinder the creativity of an architect? Is it even sustainable to revamp and demolish perfectly working structures in order to align with Vastu-related principles? And when we're looking at modern-day education in terms of architecture, IIT University in India has even started to incorporate Vastu as part of its architectural curriculum. And homeowners have started to seek for Vastu-aligned houses. However, blind faith and misinterpretations have started to cloud the practice, requiring a critical reevaluation of it in today's world. The challenge architects now face lie in striking a balance between tradition and modernity. In today's fast-paced world with advanced technology and budget constraints, integrating ancient practices requires discernment. The question persists. Should architects maybe selectively adopt these traditions to create better homes, hospitals, and schools? Can we use these principles to create better healing, learning, and working environments? After all, we as architects or future architects hold the power to mold these spaces and the experiences of those that dwell within them. And at the end of the day, life is not measured by time, but by moments, especially the small moments, the mundane ones, and the ones we create in the spaces we live in most. We shape our homes, and our homes shape us. Thank you.